For 3 decades, my life was a relentless symphony of chaos. The stakes were always high, the tension palpable, the threats very real. When I finally walked away, I sought the opposite, a quiet rhythm, anonymity, the profound peace of an ordinary life. This neighborhood, with its manicured lawns and predictable routines, promised that sanctuary. It was meant to be my final chapter, a place where danger meant nothing more than forgetting to take out the trash. I found a certain comfort in the mundane, the simple act of tending to my garden, the quiet hum of the afternoon, the familiar faces of neighbors waving from afar. It was a carefully constructed peace, a deliberate act of shedding a former identity that had commanded respect, instilled fear, and demanded constant vigilance. To them, I was just John, the quiet retiree, perhaps a bit too private, but ultimately harmless. They had no idea the careful architecture of my anonymity, the layers beneath the surface of my normal existence, and I intended to keep it that way. Some secrets are meant to stay buried, especially when your past is as demanding as mine. The skills I'd honed, the instincts I'd developed, were meant to be locked away with the old badges and the faded commendations. My days of chasing shadows and dismantling networks were over. I traded bulletproof vests for gardening gloves, high-stakes investigations for mundane HOA meetings. Or so I thought. This quiet life, this meticulously crafted facade, was my shield against the world I'd left behind. It was also, unknowingly, a shield against the new threats emerging right next door. It didn't take long for the first cracks to appear in my peaceful retirement. Her name, inevitably, was Karen. She emerged from the suburban woodwork like a well-oiled machine of self-appointed authority. My lawn was to green, an affront to water conservation. My mailbox was to rustic, a violation of aesthetic conformity. Every minor detail, every personal choice, became an opportunity for her to assert her perceived dominance. She saw my quiet nature not as a desire for peace, but as an invitation for control. She saw an ordinary man. She had no idea she was poking a sleeping giant. The initial skirmishes with Karen were, in retrospect, almost amusing. Her incessant complaints about my prize-winning hydrangeas or on the precise shade of my fence were the predictable antics of a petty dictator. I tried to dismiss them as the unfortunate cost of suburban living, the white noise of a community that had too much time on its hands. I'd nod, offer a polite but firm rebuttal, and return to my quiet life. But her persistence, her almost obsessive focus on my every move, began to gnaw at me. This wasn't just about HOA bylaws. It was personal. The harassment slowly escalated, shedding its veil of community concern. My garbage cans would be mysteriously overturned on days when there was no wind. Anonymous, venomous emails, hinting at my supposed unneighborly conduct, would appear in the HOA general inbox. Children in the neighborhood, once friendly, started giving me wide berth, their eyes reflecting an unspoken fear. Karen's gossip, it seemed, was more potent than any official complaint. She was poisoning the well, turning the very fabric of my peaceful retreat into a breeding ground for suspicion and resentment. Then came the incident that cut through the noise. It was a seemingly innocuous event, a brief encounter in the neighborhood park. I saw Karen, engaged in a hushed, intense conversation with a man I didn't recognize. Their body language was tense, furtive. She passed him a small, nondescript envelope. The whole exchange lasted less than a minute, but it was enough. The casual ease with which she operated, the quick, almost practiced movement, it wasn't the behavior of a simple, overzealous HOA president. It was the choreography of someone accustomed to clandestine dealings. My professional instincts, long dormant, began to stir. It was a familiar feeling, a cold, analytical surge of suspicion that bypassed the conscious mind and went straight to the gut. This wasn't petty. This wasn't a Karen. This felt like something orchestrated, something with an agenda far more sinister than enforcing lawn aesthetics. The man she met, the way she scanned her surroundings, the almost imperceptible tremor in her hand as she passed the envelope, it all screamed operative, not homemaker. My quiet retirement had just received an unexpected and unwelcome activation code. The rules of engagement had changed. This wasn't a neighborhood dispute anymore. It was an intelligence operation. My home, once a sanctuary, now needed to become a fortress of information. I dusted off skills I thought I'd never use again. My shed, once filled with gardening tools, transformed into a covert command center. State-of-the-art surveillance equipment, remnants from a past life, found new purpose. Hidden cameras, no larger than a button, were meticulously placed among the hydrangeas and within the eaves of my garage. Motion sensors, infrared triggers, every conceivable method of observation was deployed, designed to capture every shadow, every whisper, every fleeting movement. This wasn't about catching Karen in another trivial act. This was about uncovering the truth behind her sudden shift from petty tyrant to clandestine operator. I didn't know what I was looking for, not specifically, but I knew that when you start digging, you often find more than you bargained for. And I had a gut feeling that Karen's little community projects were about to get very, very dark. My quiet anonymity was a powerful cover. She wouldn't even know she was being watched, analyzed, and ultimately targeted by someone far more experienced in the art of the unseen. My surveillance paid off quickly. Karen's behavior shifted from mere annoyance to outright desperation. She was under pressure, visibly agitated. Her phone calls became more frequent, her movements more erratic. I caught snippets of hushed conversations, keywords like deadline and complication floating through the air. It became clear she wasn't just a busybody. She was a pawn, or perhaps a minor player, in something far larger and far more dangerous than HOA squabbles. She needed a scapegoat, someone to deflect attention. And in her myopic view of the world, I, the quiet, mysterious newcomer, fit the bill perfectly. I knew she was looking for a way to discredit me, to remove me as a perceived obstacle. What I didn't anticipate was the sheer depth of her malice. She needed something that would not just inconvenience me, but utterly destroy me, something that would bring down the kind of attention that would guarantee my silence, or my absence. And in her desperation, she settled on a weapon as old as crime itself, illegal narcotics. A simple plant, a quick phone call, and suddenly, the quiet retiree next door would be facing a nightmare he couldn't possibly escape. The night she made her move was almost poetic in its predictability. The moon was a sliver, the neighborhood silent. My carefully placed cameras, however, saw everything. She moved like a shadow, cautious but determined, a small, dark package clutched in her hand. My vehicle, sitting innocently in the driveway, became the target. I watched, dispassionately, as she effortlessly gained entry, her movements suggesting either prior access or a surprising aptitude for petty crime. She placed the package with chilling precision, a venomous seed planted in inlet she believed would be the perfect soil for my destruction. Her face, briefly illuminated by a distant street lamp, was a canvas of malicious satisfaction, a fleeting moment of triumph for a woman who thought she was holding all the cards. The footage was irrefutable. Every angle, every second, meticulously documented. It was textbook, no ambiguity, no plausible deniability. She had not only trespassed, but had attempted to frame me for a felony. The weight of her action was immense, but my reaction was anything but panic. There was no rage, no outburst, just a cold, calculating calm. My past, the one I had tried so desperately to bury, was now demanding its full attention. Karen had just pulled the pin on a grenade, and she was standing right next to it. The evidence was compelling, but the protocol had to be followed. Early the next morning, with my surveillance still running, I retrieved the package. No bare hands, no smudges, every precaution, every detail, meticulously observed. Back in my workshop, a room that had seen more intricate forensic analysis than any HOA meeting, I conducted a rapid field test. The results were conclusive. Cocaine, a significant amount, enough to warrant serious charges, enough to end any man's retirement in a federal prison. The discovery solidified what my gut had told me. This was no longer a personal feud. This was a criminal act, orchestrated with malicious intent. My peaceful retirement, my anonymity, my entire carefully constructed life had been targeted by a woman who thought she held dominion over everyone in her path. She saw a quiet retiree. She didn't see the years of training, the hardened resolve, the relentless pursuit of justice that defined my past. Karen had overplayed her hand, stepping out of the realm of petty HOA drama and into a world she couldn't possibly comprehend. And now, it was time for her to face the consequences of inviting the wolves back to the sheepdog's yard. The stage was set. I orchestrated a meeting, ostensibly to address Karen's concerns about my property. I ensured it was formal, documented, and crucially, that the HOA president and a key board member were present. Karen arrived with her usual air of self-importance, a smug smile plastered across her face. She saw me as a lamb being led to slaughter, a man about to be crushed under the weight of her manufactured accusations. She had no idea she was stepping into a meticulously crafted trap, one designed by hands far more adept at psychological warfare than she could ever imagine. I let her speak first. I listened patiently as she recounted a fabricated narrative of my supposed suspicious activities, her voice dripping with self-righteous indignation. She painted a picture of me, a recluse, a potential danger to the community, building her case for my expulsion, all while smugly avoiding any mention of her own late-night excursions. She spoke with absolute conviction, never once glancing at the hidden camera lens, never suspecting the silent witnesses to her deceit. Her performance was almost commendable, if it weren't so utterly transparent to a trained eye. When she finally finished her tirade, a silence fell over the room. I let it hang in the air, a precursor to the storm. Then, without a word, I turned to the monitor. The screen flickered to life, displaying crystal clear, time-stamped footage. The gasps from the HOA board members were audible. Karen's confident smirk dissolved, replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. She watched, horrified, as her own image, illuminated by night vision, meticulously planted the package in my car. Her denials, once vehement, choked in her throat. She lunged, screaming, towards the screen, as if she could erase the undeniable truth unfolding before her eyes. I let her panic for a moment, letting the full weight of her actions sink in. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, I reached into my jacket pocket. The badge felt cold and familiar in my hand. I held it up, letting the official insignia gleam under the office lights. Her eyes, wide with fear, fixated on it. Her entire body seemed to deflate, the color draining from her face as the full, horrifying reality of her mistake crashed over her. My voice, now devoid of any pretense of retirement, was cold, measured, and carried the weight of true authority. Karen, I stated, each word a hammer blow, you just tried to frame an FBI chief, and that, in my line of work, is a very serious offense. The local authorities, who I had quietly alerted moments before the meeting, arrived swiftly. Karen's screams of denial turned into whimpers of terror as the handcuffs clicked into place. The spectacle unfolded for the entire neighborhood to witness. The gossip, the whispers, the passive-aggressive notes, all of it paled in comparison to the sight of their self-proclaimed community leader being escorted away by law enforcement. The silence that fell over the street was not of suburban complacency, but of utter shock and a dawning realization of the truth. The fallout for the HOA was immediate and severe. Karen's actions brought a level of scrutiny they were entirely unprepared for. Investigations into her past behavior, her connections, and any potential wider corruption within the association began. Her reign of terror wasn't just over. It had imploded, taking with it the illusion of community harmony she so desperately tried to maintain. Justice, I've always believed, is a meticulous process. It finds its way, sometimes slowly, sometimes through unexpected channels. Karen had thought she was manipulating a quiet retiree. She had, instead, inadvertently woken a sleeping Wolf, bringing down a fury she could never have comprehended. My anonymous retirement had been shattered, but in its place, a different kind of peace had emerged, the peace of absolute, undeniable justice. The dust settled slowly, as it always does after a storm. Karen's departure from the neighborhood was not mourned, save perhaps by a few who had benefited from her particular brand of community manipulation. Her vacant house, a stark reminder of her downfall, eventually found new occupants, blissfully unaware of the drama that had played out within its walls and on its curb. My anonymity, once shattered by her relentless intrusion, gradually began to reform. The suspicious glances from neighbors had been replaced by respectful nods, a quiet understanding of the true nature of the quiet retiree in their midst. My sanctuary, once besieged, was truly mine again. The experience left its mark, as all battles do. The trust in superficial peace had been eroded, replaced by a deeper, more profound vigilance. The hidden cameras remained, though their daily checks became less urgent. The lessons from decades in the field, once packed away, were now a constant, subtle hum beneath the surface of my quiet life. I had wanted a simple retirement, free from the complexities and dangers of my past. Karen, in her misguided arrogance, had forced me to confront that past, to reactivate those very instincts I had sought to bury, and in doing so, she reminded me that some identities, once forged in fire, can never truly be extinguished. Justice, in its purest form, is often an unseen force, working diligently beneath the surface. Karen learned this the hard way. Her belief that her petty entitlement could outwit a lifetime of dedicated service was a fatal miscalculation. She had sought to destroy my reputation, to dismantle my peace, but in the end, she only succeeded in dismantling her own life. The irony was not lost on me. You see, the world has its Karens, its petty tyrants who believe their local authority transcends all boundaries, all laws. But the world also has its protectors, its quiet guardians who, even in retirement, understand that some lines simply cannot be crossed. My duty, I thought, was complete. But sometimes, duty finds you, even in the tranquility of a suburban garden. And when it does, you answer. You remind those who forget that true power isn't about control or intimidation. It's about responsibility. It's about integrity. It's about the unwavering commitment to uphold what is right, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant the battle. My quiet retirement was disrupted? Yes, but it was also affirmed. Affirmed that the fight for justice never truly ends. It merely changes its battlefield, and sometimes, that battlefield is simply your own backyard.